In this lesson, we're going to look at the concept of opposite and non-opposite pairs. And what does that mean? It means that there will be two pairs of synonyms in the answer choices. One of these pairs is the opposite of what you want, the opposite of the meaning you're looking for, and the other is non-opposite, which is to say, correct. So what do you need to know about this pattern? Well, first off, it's fairly common. About half of the SE prompts that you see are going to have this pattern where one pair of synonyms in there is the exact opposite meaning of what you need. It's generally found in a prompt that would have two pairs of synonyms in it. However, sometimes it'll be found in a prompt with three pairs of synonyms, where you'll have an opposite pair, a non-opposite pair, and then a pair of synonyms that simply doesn't fit the context at all. So, what are strategies to deal with this, to make sure that you don't accidentally choose the opposite pair, because rest assured the GRE will try to trick you? Well, first, you want some traditional text completion strategies. Paraphrase and put your own word in the blank, and then look for the pair of synonyms that matches your paraphrase, the word you have in mind. Also, really think about the difference between each pair of synonyms in terms of basic meaning, just as you think about the difference between individual words in text completion. And what is the difference between these pairs of synonyms in relation to context as well as meaning? Now, especially pay attention to when two ideas are being contrasted in an SE sentence. Because when two ideas are being contrasted, you have opposite ideas within the sentence, meaning the pair of synonyms that's the opposite of what you want will probably match one of the ideas in the sentence, but not the ideas in the part of the sentence that the blank actually describes. And contrast is very often used along these opposite pairs because that's a great way for the GRE to kind of trick you and make it so that what's the opposite of what you need is not necessarily obvious. Okay, so ultimately just test out both pairs of synonyms. Which pair makes the most sense and why, using the strategies I mentioned above. To see these strategies in action, let's look at an example sentence. Okay, so I will tell you straight up that there is one pair of synonyms here that is the opposite of what you want, and a second pair of synonyms in the answer choice that's exactly what you want. So, can you identify the correct pair of synonyms and eliminate the incorrect one? Pause the video and we'll come back and see how you did. Okay, welcome back. Now, the first thing you want to do is eliminate imaginative and impressive. They are not synonyms to each other. They aren't synonyms to anything else. We don't need to worry about them. So that leaves us with two pairs of synonyms. Cramped and dense, meaning the objects in the asteroid belt are close together. Dispersed and scattered, meaning they're far apart. Now, dispersed and scattered absolutely do match an idea in the sentence. They match the idea of these big gaps, these great distances between objects in the asteroid belt. But here's the problem. They match the ideas in the second half of the sentence. But the blank is in the first half of the sentence, and the first half of the sentence is a departure, is indicating sort of departure from the second half of the sentence. There's a contrast here. So what would contrast with the idea of things that are far apart? Well, things that are cramped, close together, or dense, pushed close together. So the real contrast we want is the idea that cramped, dense asteroid belts in science fiction are very different from this real asteroid belt where everything's far apart. So we can actually eliminate dispersed and scattered because they're the opposite of what you want, and they instead match this contrasting idea to the blank in the second part of the sentence. Okay, so now let's look at one of those rarer, harder ones where we really do have three pairs of synonyms. So take a look at this, see if you can find the opposite synonym, the correct synonym pair, and the synonym pair that simply doesn't fit, and get to the right answer. I'm going to pause the video, and then we'll talk. And we're back. So let's pair off these synonyms. We have thrifty and frugal, and we have esteemed and reputable, very trustworthy. And then we have cunning and devious, not trustworthy, sneaky and dishonest. Okay, so cunning and devious and esteemed and reputable seem like they're the opposites. So would thrifty and frugal be the pair that just doesn't fit? Well, yes, because maybe you get wealthy by being thrifty and frugal. Sorry, not frisky, thrifty and frugal. Maybe you don't. Thriftiness and frugalness also doesn't have a direct correlation with the idea of accusing somebody or somebody stealing or plotting. Just kind of a misfit pair. Let's not worry about those. Okay, so now let's look at which of these opposite pairs to each other works the best. It says that Mrs. Zeiger accused her employees even though they were a certain way. So they're saying even though they're this way that you wouldn't expect them to be accused, she accused them anyway. Well, if somebody's cunning and devious, you would expect them to be accused of stealing and plotting. That's what cunning and devious, dishonest people do. So that's not what we want. What we actually want is something that contrasts with cunning, devious, stealing, and plotting. And that would be esteemed and reputable. If people are trustworthy, then you would say it's kind of surprising that even though they're trustworthy, they get accused of doing these bad things. So this is the correct pair, and D and E are the opposite of correct. And so we've now successfully navigated a second question that actually had 3 synonyms.